Hey guys, welcome back to the continuation of this course, the FreeCodeCamp JavaScript Algorithms and Data Structures course. It's about 300 hours. We've done about an hour worth of lessons so far. We're about 35 lessons in out of 111. So we're going to try to do a couple more in this video. I want to get this to about 55, maybe 56 in this part, if not, but maybe by the end of the next part, so that we can be halfway done with part one, right? There's a few other sections that we have to go through to complete the entire course, but we're making good progress so far. So we're gonna keep going, and we left off with the Mad Libs or the word blanks challenge. So that's what we're gonna do right now. So let's continue. So here it says, we will now use our knowledge of strings to build a Mad Lib style word game we're calling word blanks. You will create an optionally humorous fill in the blanks style sentence. In a Mad Libs game, you are provided sentences with some missing words like nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. You then fill in the missing pieces with words of your choice in a way that the completed sentence makes sense. Consider this sentence. It was really blank, comma, and we blank ourselves blank. This sentence has three missing pieces: an adjective, a verb, and an adverb. And we can add words of our choice to complete it. We can then assign the completed sentence, sorry, I got a little distracted. We can then assign the completed sentence to a variable as follows. Variable sentence, it was really plus hot plus, and so we're concatenating words into the sentence, and this is the blanks that were hot and laughed are the blanks that we're filling in, as well as silly. In this challenge, we can provide you with a noun, a verb, and an adjective, and an adverb. You need to form a complete sentence using words of your choice along with the words we provide. You will need to use the string concatenation operator to build a new string using the provided variables my noun, my adjective, my verb, and my adverb. You will then assign the form string to the word blanks variable. You should not change the words assigned to the variables. You will also need to account for spaces in your string so that the final sentence has spaces between all the words. The result should be a complete sentence. So these are the words that are provided for us, and we're just going to be filling them in here to form a complete sentence. So we can do something like and then here we can say my adjective. And then we can continue the sentence, scary, and then, whoops, my noun. So we can continue to just add here my verb, add a space. Actually, we should add a space here as well. And then my adverb to close off the sentence. And if we were to print this, or to console log it to the console, we should see our formulated sentence. The big scary dog ran quickly, right? And you can even just trim some words here, get rid of the scary, and just concatenate the variables here into the sentence, and it would still work. You can add whatever you want, you can take out whatever you want. You just have to form a sentence using the provided words by calling these variables that are assigned these adverbs, nouns, and so on and so forth. So there we go. That's how you do that. Here we are moving on to arrays. So the first part of the arrays lessons is called storing multiple values in one variable using JavaScript arrays. So with JavaScript array variables, we can store several pieces of data in one place. You can start on an array declaration with an opening square bracket and end it with a closing square bracket, and put a comma between each entry like this. So here our variable sandwich. In our sandwich we have peanut butter, right? And we have jelly or bread. These are all strings separated by commas. So the challenge here is to modify the new array, my array, so that it contains both a string and a number in that order. So this is our array that we're going to be modifying, and he wants us to use a string and a number. So we can just say age, and we're going to say 23. Simple as that. So that's one thing you should know about JavaScript, is that arrays aren't data type specific. You can mix strings with numbers, with objects, and so on and so forth. In Java, for example, arrays are data specific. So you can have an array of just integers, an array of just strings, an array of just objects, etc., etc. You can't have an array of strings and objects or strings and numbers. You can't mix them. But in JavaScript, that's allowed. This next lesson is about nesting arrays. Nesting one array within another array. So here it says that you can also nest arrays within other arrays like below. Here we have Bulls, 23, White Sox, 45. So this is one array with two items in them, a string and a number. And then we have another array with a string and a number. And these two arrays are separated by commas, and they're nested inside a larger array. So this is called a multi-dimensional array. So here the challenge is to create a nested array called myArray. So we can do anything we want here. Again, so we have one big array, right? You see these square brackets, they symbolize the opening and closing of an array. But we need to basically put the items inside of an array as an array themselves. So we're going to do square brackets here, and then inside of here we can then start putting in our content. So maybe we can do here fruits. We can say mango, we could say apple, and in here we can say McDonald's, Burger King, right? And that's pretty much how you nest arrays in JavaScript. So let's keep it going. Here we're learning how to access array data with indexes. So here it says we can access the data inside arrays using indexes. Array indexes are written in the same bracket notation that strings use. So if you remember in the last video, we learned about getting specific letters in a string using bracket notation. So we're going to be doing something similar here to access certain indexes or certain items in an array. So he says array indexes are written in the same bracket notation that strings use, except that instead of specifying a character, they're specifying an entry in the array. Like strings, arrays use zero-based indexing, so the first element in an array has an index of 0. So remember, 0 means, so here we have 3 items inside this array. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, zero-based indexing basically means that this first item is at position 0, second item is position 1, third item is position 2. Here we have an example. So here we have an array with 3 items in it, 50, 60, 70, same thing as over here. We want to get the item at index 0, so we use bracket notation with our array to access the item at index 0, which is 50. And then we can do the same thing here. We can say we can create a new variable called data, and then get the index at position 1, so which is 60. And so that's what we're doing here by using bracket notation. Very similar to how we did it with strings. There shouldn't be any spaces between the array name and the square brackets. Although JavaScript is able to process this correctly, this may confuse other programmers reading your code. So avoid doing this. Always do it where there's no space between the array name that you're accessing and the bracket notation. Don't put any spaces, even though JavaScript might still process it. It's going to get confusing down the line for you, for other people who want to read your code. Keep everything clean and concise. Here we are instructed to create a variable called myData and set it equal to the first value of my array using bracket notation. So the first item, right, first value is 50. So we're going to say variable myData, is equal to my array at position 0. And that's it. Modify array data with indexes. So remember, when we were learning about strings, we learned that strings are immutable, right? So I can't get a specific letter and try to change it to something else using bracket notation or any other method, right? If I wanted to do, variable my str is equal to job I can't do my str at 0, oops, is equal to b, right? This is not gonna work. This is not legal. JavaScript can't. It's not gonna work, right? You can see here it says something cannot assign to read-only property. Right? Strings are only read-on only. If I wanted to change this to Bob, I would have to manually say my str is equal to Bob. Right? This works. But with arrays, it's different. We can actually target specific indexes and change them, right, using bracket notation as well. So for example, here we have variable R array is equal to 50, 40, 30. We want to change the index 0 here in the array to 15. So we say R array at position 0, right? The first item, change it to 15. So now R array is going to be 15, 40, 30 instead of 50, 40, 30. Again, here's a note that says don't leave any spaces here. It's just, bad practice for legibility. Modify the data stored at index 0 of my array to a value of 45. So here we can just say my array at 0 is equal to 45. So when we log this, it's going to say 45 64.99 instead of 18 64.99. Or you can even see the difference here if I was to log it first, and then you can see it. Before we made our modification, 18 64.99, just like how it was first set up. Then we modified it. We changed the first number here, the first index, to 45. So now it says 45 64.99. Now here it says access multi-dimensional arrays with indexes. One way to think of a multi-dimensional array is an array of arrays. When we use bracket to access your array, the first set of brackets refer to the entries in the outermost, right, the first level array, and each additional pair of brackets refers to the next level of entries inside. So take for example here we have a variable array, and then here we have nested arrays, right? So we have the first array has 1, 2, 3, second array 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we have another entry of more nested arrays. So if you want to access this, right, 0, 1, 2, 3, if you want to get 7, 8, 9, we just say array 3, right? We want to get the third nested array here, this one. But let's say we want to get the first item in this nested array. So we can just continue to add a second set of brackets to get the 0. Let's say we wanted to get 0, 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, we should be looking at this nested array here. So if we wanted to get this array, right, we come here. So we say array 3 with bracket notation 3. If we wanted to get this, right, this first index in this nested array, we just add more brackets and we specify 0. But if we want to get this first item here, then we're going to continue to concatenate it and throw in a 1. So this is basically what I've just been explaining here, written out in text. So there shouldn't be any spaces. Again, same thing. For legibility purposes, don't leave spaces when you're doing bracket notation. It's just, bad practice. Here we're instructed to use bracket notation to select an element from my array such that my data is equal to 8. So if we look through here, we have an array which has 1, 2, 3, 4 items in it. And so it's an array with nested arrays as its items inside. We want to access this, right? The 8. This is the only 8 inside the entire nested array. So we want to modify this, right? This bracket notation call here to get access to this. So remember, 0-based indexing. So this first item here, this first array is at 0. The second array is at 1. Third array is at, 0, 1, 2. Second array with third, but it's position 2 if you're counting from 0-based indexing. Again, this gets a little confusing, but that's how you do it. So we're gonna switch this to a 2. Now, actually, I wanna log this so you can see what's going on here. So at 0, 0, we get 1. But we want to get this 8 here, so we're gonna switch this to 2 as we've counted on 0-based indexing. So now at 2, 0, we're calling this 7, right? We want this is the first index at position 2 of the nested arrays of this whole larger array. We're gonna get this 8, so we're gonna go. So if this is at 0, then that means that 8 is at 1. So we're gonna change that to 1, as you can see. There we go. We get the 8 that we're supposed to be pulling. Always console log whenever you're doing these challenges. It's gonna help you see exactly what you're doing if you want to pinpoint specific values. Manipulate arrays with push. An easy way to append data to the end of an array is via push. So to append basically means to add, right? To put to the end. So here we have nested arrays, right? We have one array, second array, and if you wanted to add an item after this, right? This push function is the same thing as if I was to manually type, apples, or if I was to add another nested array here. But there's a function called push that we can do this if we don't want to scroll back up in our code and modify something, or if we're building some sort of functionality that requires us to add something to an array. So that push takes one or more parameters, and pushes, right, in quotes, pushes them onto the end of the array. Here's an example. We have a variable array1, right, as items 1, 2, 3. I want to push 4 into this array, so I'm going to do array1.push, and we pass in our parameter, the number 4, and so now this variable array is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing here. Variable array2 is an array of strings, and I want to push a nested array as an item after cat, so we're going to say array2.push, then we're going to put in the array that we want to push with the items inside that we want to push, and that's what's going to happen. So here it's going to say array1 now has value 1, 2, 3, 4, and array2 has the value Stimson, J, cat, and then we have a nested array with happy and joy. So we want to push dog, comma 3 onto the end of the myArray variable. So myArray again is a nested array, right? Or two-dimensional arrays, and we want to do. So actually, I'm going to console.log myArray so you can see the changes that we're making. And so now we want to push dog, comma 3. So we're just going to say myArray.push, and we're pushing an array into this two-dimensional array here. So we're going to use our brackets, dog 3. So now when we log it, you can see that we've added dog and 3, just like how we wanted us to do it. This is manipulating arrays with .pop, or P, the pop function. Another way to change the data in an array is with the pop function. .pop is used to pop a value off the end of an array. We can store this popped off value by assigning it to a variable. In other words, .pop removes the last element from the array and returns that element. Right, so say for example here we had my array1 is equal to 1, 2, 3, right? And I wanted to get rid of this 3. I wanted to modify this array so I can get rid of this 3. So I can just do array1.pop, and it's going to get rid of this 3. If we were to console.log array1, you can see it's just going to be 1, 2. But this value of 3 is just not floating around, right? I guess maybe that's not a great way to explain it. But we can do something with this 3 instead of just getting rid of it entirely. So instead of just saying array1.pop, we can say variable num is equal to array.pop. So then if we console.log num, you can see the 3 that we just popped off. So it's there. We can now continue to manipulate it and use it down the line if we needed to. So that's something you should keep in mind. Here's an example, right? Variable 3, this is what I was demonstrating right now. Variable 3 array is equal to 1, 4, 6. And 1 down is 3.pop. So the 6 is now going to be popped off, and it's going to be assigned to 1 down. So if we log 1 down, it's going to show 6. And if we log 3 array, it's going to just be 1 and 4. Here we're instructed to use the pop function to remove the last item from my array, assigning the popped off value to remove from my array. So simple. I'm going to get rid of this. We don't need that anymore. We are going to log it so you can see what's going on. Whoops. We're also going to console.log this. So we just want to do myArray.pop, and that's just going to pull this second nested array of this whole multi-dimensional array, and it's going to assign it to remove from my array. And there we go. So now my array is just John 23, and removed from my array is just cat and 2. And you can even do this. You can console log it before we make the modification, so you can see originally our array is just John 23 and cat and 2. Then we did the pop. Now it's the array is just a multi-dimensional nested array with John and 23. I was like, oh, where did that popped off nested array go to? We assigned to this variable here when we're doing the pop, when we're calling the pop function, and then now it's right here. It's assigned to this, so we logged it, and now we can do something with this code if we wanted to. Here we can do manipulating arrays with shift. So pop always removes the last element of an array. But what if you wanted to remove the first? That's where that shift comes in. It works just like pop, except it removes the first element instead of the last. Example: variable R array is equal to Stimson, J, and a nested array of cat. Variable removed from first array is R array.shift. So removed from first array is not going to be equal to Stimson. Right, so this is what's been explained here. And now our array is just going to be left with J and cat. Use the .shift function to remove the first item from my array, assigning the shifted off value to removed from my array. So again, we're going to console.log my array. Then we're going to do the modification. My array.shift. Right. Now we're going to log remove from my array. So originally my array had John and 23. Then we shifted. And now we're logging. Actually, we should probably log my array now. Now you can see my array just has dog and 3, and the item that we moved from the beginning of the array is John and 23. Manipulate arrays with unshift. Not only can you shift elements from off of the beginning of an array, you can also unshift elements at the beginning of an array. Add elements in front of the array, right? So shift and unshift are opposite functions, or opposite calls that you can make on an array. So shift, you take away from the front. Unshift, you put or you add to the front. So unshift works exactly like push, but instead of adding an element at the end of the array, unshift adds the element at the beginning of the array. So for example, variable R array has Stimson, J, and cat. If we shifted this, we remove Stimson. If we do unshift and put happy, now our array is going to be happy, J, cat. So you're instructed to add Paul, 35 to the beginning of the myArray variable using unshift. So I'm not going to log this. It just takes a little bit of time now. But it's just to demonstrate here. So variable myArray has John and John 23, dog and 3. We remove John, remove this, John 23. So now we just have dog and 3. So now myArray.unshift, and we want to add Paul 35. Oops. And yeah, that's how you do it. Create a shopping. This is the shopping list challenge. Create a shopping list in the variable myList. The list should be a multi-dimensional array containing several subarrays. The first element in each subarray should contain a string with the name of the item. The second element should be a number representing the quantity. There should be at least 5 subarrays in the list. So here we can say apple. We want 10 apples. We want bread. We want 2 loaves of bread. We want milk. We want 2 gallons of milk. We want cereal, 2 boxes of cereal. And we also want, what can we put in there? We want peanut butter. That's good. And we want 1 can of peanut butter. And that's it. Simple. Just a bunch of nested arrays. Let's continue. Write reusable JavaScript with functions. So now we're getting into the meat of this part of the course, or this part of the lesson, right? Using functions. Functions are great. This is gonna be really useful once you start learning object-oriented programming through JavaScript. In JavaScript, we can divide up our code with usable parts called functions. Here's an example of a function. So we use the function keyword, function name, followed by the parentheses, curly braces, and then we want to console.log hello world. You can call or invoke this function by using its name followed by parentheses, like this, function name. So every time we do this, we're going to be console logging hello world. Each time we do this, it's going to be console logging hello world, hello world, hello world to the dev console down here. Here we want to say create a function called reusable function which prints the string hi world to the dev console. And then we want to call it. So how do you do this? Again, you use the function keyword, then you name the function, followed by the parentheses, followed by curly braces. Then we want to say console.log hi world. Then we want to call it. Reusable function. It's going to log hi world. And if we keep calling it over and over and over and over, it's just going to keep logging hello world, hi world, hi world, hi world, over and over and over and over and over. We're going to do it only once here. And that's how you do it. So that's the simplest way to create a function. Now we can pass values to functions with arguments. Parameters are variables that act as placeholders for the values that are to be input to a function when it's called. When a function is defined, it is typically defined along with one or more parameters. The actual values that are input or passed into a function when it's called are known as arguments. Here's a function with two parameters, param1 and param2. Function test fun, parentheses, and we have param1, param2. We want to console log param1 and param2. Then we can call test fun like this, test fun hello world. We have passed two string arguments, hello and world, and inside the function param1 will equal to string hello, right? And then param2 will equal to world. Note that when you call test func again with different arguments, and the parameters will take on the value of the new arguments. So we want to create a function called function with args that accepts two arguments and outputs their sum to the dev console. Call the function with two numbers as arguments. So again, function keyword, function name. We want to pass two numbers here as arguments. We're two parameters, right? But we're gonna give them just generic names that will help identify them. So val1 and val2, open braces. And we want to do console.log val1 plus val2. So now if we call the function here and we pass 5 and 6, it's going to console log 11. If we to do this and change these numbers, we want to do 12 and 1, again we get two different numbers, right? We get a different value. So we can keep calling this as many times as we want and keep passing as many different numbers as we want, 20 and 20, and get 40, but this is basically what's going on here. So that's pretty cool. You can do a lot with functions. Oops, I'm supposed to, I forgot to erase too much here. Global scope and functions. In JavaScript, scope refers to the visibility of variables. Variables which are defined outside of a function block have a global scope. This means they can be seen everywhere in your JavaScript code. Variables which are declared without the variable keyword are automatically created in the global scope. This can create unintended consequences elsewhere in your code or when running a function again. You should always declare your variables with var. Using var, declare a global variable named myGlobal outside of any function. Initialize it with a value of 10. Inside function 1 or fun1, assign 5 to oops global without using the var keyword. So here we want to declare a variable called myGlobal and set it equal to 10. Then we want to go inside of fun1 and assign 5 to oops global. So here it says oops global is equal to 5. So what's happening here? So myGlobal is accessible outside, basically any and everywhere on this code block here. So we can use my global inside of this function. We can use it inside of this function as it's being happening here. But oops global is defined. I'm assuming so. Oops global, since we didn't specify a variable here, right? It's if I was to say variable oops global, this now only becomes accessible inside of this function, right? So this code down here wouldn't work, right? It would be undefined if we didn't set this if statement contingency here. But because I didn't use the variable keyword and I just did oops global, now this automatically becomes accessible everywhere else. It basically becomes a global variable by default because I didn't specify that it's a variable. I didn't use the variable keyword here. So that's some. This is basically what this lesson is teaching you. It's about scope and global scopes and functionality. So if you declare it specifically outside using variable, it automatically becomes accessible everywhere else. If you declare it inside of a function but you don't use the variable keyword, it automatically becomes a a global variable. But if I was to use it, it now becomes inaccessible to everybody else. It only becomes useful in here. So even in here, I can continue to manipulate it, and it's gonna keep working. But anywhere else, it's not use. It's not useful. So let's keep going. Local scope and functions. Variables which are declared within a function as well as the function parameters have local scope. That means that they're only visible within that function. Here's a function myTest with a local variable called lock, LOC. Function myTest, variable lock is equal to foo, console.log lock, so it's going to be logging foo. So every single time I call myTest, it's going to be foo. But if I was to say console.log lock, this is not going to work, right? Because lock is not a global variable; it's a local variable. It only exists in here. So the myTest function code will display the string foo in the console. The console.log lock line will throw an error as lock is not defined outside of the function. The editor has two console logs to help you see what is happening. Check the console as you code to see how it changes. Declare a local variable inside my var, inside my local scope, and run the tests. Note the console will display a reference error. My variable is not defined, but this will not cause the tests to fail. So we just run this. Okay, you should add local my var to. Sorry. All right.